So here we are, not back in my car. If you've watched anything else that I've put up so far, I normally record these videos in my car because it was pretty isolated, soundproofed, and it was pretty good acoustically. But I'm in my study today, and the real reason is my wife's at dinner with someone else, so I can do this. um, so yeah, typical format is the inspiration for these videos is that I've written another blog post. It kind of puts the bumpers on the bowling alley and keeps me on track, so to speak. I go into these videos very unprepared, but also I'm just looking to see where things take me from a point of actually talking as opposed to writing, because it's quite different format. Writing's very good and it's very calculated and you can change things, even though I kind of write from the hip. I don't religiously go over the content and edit it and make sure it's perfect. It is like talking in a way for me, but I still do have the opportunity to review what I'm saying as I write it. Whereas recording a video, I don't really get the opportunity to do that. So they're kind of, I just have to keep going and rolling with the punches. Any bloody way. This blog post is called Inside and Out. And the real idea behind that is I thought, the big part of the equation that I'd held dear for a long time was what you do in the world is really how you influence things and affect other people, as opposed to what's going on inside you. And I think we can all relate to that. We don't share a lot of our internal dialogue, mostly because it's just negative garbage that you're dissecting your mind and dissecting yourself and pulling things apart. So it's not really appropriate most of the time to express what's going on inside your head because, you don't even know, you haven't even had a chance to make sense of it. So for me, though, when I was a teenager, I kind of made a conscious decision to not hurt other people, whether physically, emotionally, spiritually, through association with bragging. It's another way you can hurt people, I suppose. You can actually, say what's going on in your life in a way that is it's a stark contrast to what's going on in someone else's life, and it can make them feel inadequate or whatever it might be. And the only reason I know that is because it happens to me. It's not like my life's perfect or anything. So the inside part is pretty important, what's going on in there. Up until recently, I'd always thought that it didn't really matter too much. I could have these inappropriate thoughts. I could go on tangents. I could be almost a little bit evil, some would say. And it wouldn't really have a big impact on the world around me. So, when I was younger, I would refrain from saying what I was thinking or telling the truth or knowing what I was about to do was going to have a negative impact on somebody else. That's what it really boils down to. So I chose to act carefully, tried to choose my words carefully when in the company of people that could receive them poorly, that don't necessarily understand my intentions, which is pretty important as well, and I'll probably come back to that. I was pretty calculated early on. And just to go back a step, the reason I record these videos is to practice talking about things that I don't get to talk about. And also the same with the blog posts. They're things that I don't get to explore typically. A lot of things go on in my life. I haven't recorded a video in 6+ months. I wrote this blog post a couple months ago. Life gets in the way sometimes, as I'm sure we can all relate. But at some point you come back to, having time and being able to do what you would like to do. And also you get a bit more perspective as time goes on as well. So that's an added bonus of taking your time and not punishing yourself to be consistent, because it doesn't necessarily create a better work output necessarily. And this is kind of work in a weird way. I'm working on myself. I'm trying to encapsulate what's going on in the back of my mind and bringing you along for the ride. So with the blog post, I kind of get to this point where I explain that, I thought that it was my actions, the things I do and the things I say, and my behavior and how that impacts other people. And I saw that a lot of people's behavior and actions and things they say impact others negatively. And usually it's because they're reacting or they're getting something off their chest that they can't really deal with by themselves, including me. I might refrain from saying the wrong thing, but it doesn't mean I don't say the wrong thing, sometimes as well. But I get to this point where I re-examine things because I'd come to hear about a study where a teacher who wasn't involved in an incident with a student who had done the wrong thing was asked to sit in a room by themselves for 5 minutes before dealing with their subordinate or student at their school, which was the pressing issue. And they were just asked to sit there for 5 minutes or whatever it is and really just center themselves and relax and, not really anticipate what was going to happen. And the student was asked to do the same, but they would have, the havoc of whatever they had done wrong wreaking on their mind. And then eventually they were brought into the same room and they weren't allowed to discuss what was going on straight away. They had to kind of sit with it for a moment. And I think the reason that they did that was the student's mind is obviously going on in a million directions. They're in a comfortable room with the teacher, but the teacher is sitting there having had that time by themselves to relax and not really be confronted with the issues. So they had a moment where they could just be at peace for a little bit. And I think why they gave them the time in the room together by themselves was to just let their subconscious, their body language, whatever you want to call it, rub off on each other and reach perhaps a lower medium than an elevated state of bickering and arguing about what had eventuated. And I think it was found that this was like quite a good approach to solving, let's say, social or juvenile issues. And it made me think like, well, I might be speaking with somebody and I feel the compulsion to tell them the truth and that something, they need to hear this. But like, who the fuck am I to really know what is going to resonate with them and who am I to think that I'm right? But, they're talking and I'm thinking this and I'm thinking that they're not aware of this because I'm not saying it, but somehow they are. And this is also very evident, from my understanding anyway, that, I'm sure we can all relate to this in some, minute way, depending on your upbringing and your lifestyle. Let's use a cliche like your dad coming home from work and he's had a really bad day. And you can just feel this kind of energy. He hasn't said anything or done anything or tried to hurt you. But something's wrong. And not for me as a kid, I didn't really think that I'd done something wrong. I just tried to witness the situation. But it would rub off you in some way. You would try to overcompensate for the negative experience of your parents, whether it's trying to cheer them up or, inviting them to partake in a play with you or whatever it might be. There's some back and forth, but there'd be little subtleties that would rub off on you. Your dad might be impatient with you, or he might give up very easily in the games that you're playing, or he might say something to your mum that really, like, maybe it wasn't what he said, it was how he said it that wasn't appropriate, and this would negatively impact everybody in the household. Not to beat up dads or anything, but that's kind of a common experience, I think, of most people. And he didn't have any intention to do that, but somehow what was going on with him throughout the day has manifested in those around him, being, e.g., his mum his wife and their children. And children are very susceptible to, the contagious, let's call it subconscious. It's a good feedback, something so innocent representing what's going on in you. It's kind of inevitable if you think about it. And this got me thinking that, I hate it when I say, this got me thinking that perhaps my internal dialogue is rubbing off on other people as well. Hence, what's going on inside me does affect what's going on outside me in other people's lives as well. But I spin it in a way that, I'm still learning. And I think everybody deserves that same respect, that you're not going to get it right the first time. So maybe subconsciously my mind's all over the place when I'm listening to someone speak or I'm watching what they do. And maybe they don't consciously realize that I'm having an effect on them. And I didn't think I was having an effect on them, but nonetheless I am, by being present with them and perhaps looking them in the eye. They're going to pick up on those little subtle cues, whether it's crossing your arms when you're sitting, or whether it's itching your face when you think what they're saying isn't really resonating with you, whatever it might be. And I think, what I was getting at was that I want to get to a point where what I'm saying resonates with my internal dialogue, which is nothing that's easily achieved, and it probably will never be. I want to be able to say the right thing that comes from a place of understanding, but to get to that point, I first have to withdraw from the situation to assess what the best way to go about what's going on right in front of me is. And it's like a training camp in a way. Like, I'm only 33 years old. I don't have most things figured out whatsoever. But I think, I don't know, I've got a fair commitment to my approach, which is, perhaps making people feel subconsciously uncomfortable, but I'm not directly hurting them, because that's the only thing I really have control over. I don't have control over what I'm thinking, but I do have control over what I do and what I say and how I behave and my impact on others. But I think with time that I will, I would like to match my outcome with what's going on inside me. And I pay respect to those that, don't get that perfect response or that perfect behavior or that eye twitch that, isn't there anymore when you've said the right thing, or being surprised or being disgusted, that it just comes from a place of, inner understanding that what's going on with them right now, I'm there with them, as opposed to I'm in my head thinking about, well, this person's fucked. What the fuck what am I supposed to do? Or whatever inappropriate thought just enters your mind. And I've got a pretty strong feeling that if I do this enough, it will, I will be thinking the right things eventually, and I will say the right things eventually, and I will do the right things, and I will behave appropriately. And that's a pretty high calling for me anyway, that I can pursue. It feels worthwhile. And it's a pretty imperfect process. There's going to be a lot of things I don't do well, and I don't say coherently, or I miss the point, or I'm absent when somebody else is expressing how they truly feel. But I'm working and trying to be better, and I want to have a good impact on others, as opposed to just a knee-jerk reaction where you're not speaking the truth, you're just speaking your mind. I think I might leave it there. Cheers.